In the dense hills of northern Myanmar, nestled deep within a shroud of mist and time, stood the ancient monastery of Taung Myint. Surrounded by forests that whispered with the weight of centuries, the temple had once been a beacon of enlightenment and peace. But by the late 1990s, it had become largely abandoned, visited only by wandering monks and the occasional researcher curious about its storied past. Among the overgrown courtyards and crumbling prayer halls, a group of university historians arrived one summer, hoping to document the monastery's fading glory. While exploring a sealed room behind a forgotten shrine, they uncovered a wooden chest, wrapped in red cloth and bound by black twine. Inside, among old relics and prayer beads, was a brittle scroll, yellowed with age and sealed with wax bearing an unknown symbol. Intrigued, the group took the letter back to their camp, unrolling it with utmost care. It was written in classical Pali, the ancient liturgical language of Theravada Buddhism. One of the researchers, a linguistic scholar named Dr. Arun, began to translate the script aloud under his breath. The opening line sent a chill down his spine. "This is the confession of Bhikkhu, written in the twilight of my spiritual journey, as I prepare to step into the threshold between the seen and the unseen." From that moment, the air around them felt heavier. The forest no longer whispered, it listened. Bhikkhu had once been a revered figure within Taung Myint Monastery. Known for his quiet wisdom and unwavering devotion, he was the last disciple of a now-forgotten spiritual master. In the village below, elders still whispered his name with a strange mix of reverence and fear. It was in the rainy season, nearly 3 decades before the discovery of the letter, that the monk vanished. One morning, fellow monks found his robes folded neatly at the foot of the Bodhi tree, where he often meditated. His begging bowl sat beside them, untouched, with fresh offerings from the villagers. But there was no sign of the monk himself, no tracks, no note, no farewell. Just an eerie silence. The disappearance baffled the monks and terrified the villagers. Some believed he had achieved moksha, spiritual liberation, vanishing into the divine ether. Others spoke in hushed tones of forbidden texts, of nights when candlelight flickered in his chamber long after curfew, and of chants not heard in any temple. The monastery fell into decline soon after. One by one, the remaining monks left, claiming the place had become too still. A few even described dreams of dark corridors and voices speaking in ancient tongues. The villagers stopped coming. The temple was eventually sealed, the name Bhikkhu fading from records like mist at sunrise. But now, with the letter found, his voice was returning. Dr. Arun spent the night poring over the next passage. The letter did not describe a man seeking peace. Instead, it hinted at a quest. Not for enlightenment, but for something deeper, something older. A truth hidden in silence. They call it truth, yet they fear it. What lies beyond the veil is not darkness, it is clarity. And clarity is terrifying. As Dr. Arun continued translating the letter by the dim light of his lantern, he noticed something peculiar. The ink on certain lines shimmered faintly, as if written with crushed stone rather than ordinary pigment. These lines were structured in a different rhythm, more like mantras than sentences. They pulsed with a strange cadence, as if meant to be spoken aloud. He resisted the urge. The next segment of Bhikkhu confession shifted from his personal reflections to a record of an ancient ritual he had discovered deep in the temple archives. The ritual, known only as Sutta was never practiced, only whispered about in coded scrolls. It spoke of achieving a state not through renunciation, but through facing the shadow of one's own mind, and, more dangerously, inviting it in. "I found the glyph beneath the statue of 1,000 eyes," the letter read. "Carved into stone, behind the wall where the chants grow cold. It is older than any doctrine, and it listens." According to the letter, Nanda had been guided not by divine inspiration, but by dreams. Night after night, he saw a room with no walls, where monks floated weightless and silent, their eyes wide with knowing. Each dream ended with a voice whispering his name backwards. He believed it was a sign, not madness, but revelation. More disturbing still, the letter included drawings. Symbols that didn't belong to any known script, spirals intertwined with staring eyes, and geometric shapes that felt almost alive when looked at too long. Dr. Arun found himself unable to look away from one particular figure, a wheel made of hands, turning endlessly. The mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a gate to be opened, Nanda had written. I opened mine. Something stepped through. Arun stepped back from the letter, heart racing. The jungle outside buzzed, louder than before, like it, too, had read the words and now stirred restlessly. Days passed as Dr. Arun immersed himself in Bhikkhu unsettling narrative. The deeper he read, the more fragmented the letter became, whole paragraphs written in looping, repetitive phrases, as if the monk's mind had started to unravel or shift into something unfamiliar. Nanda described how the ritual began to affect his perception. Time grew elastic. Hours passed in minutes, or minutes stretched into what felt like days. He would awaken from meditation with blood on his palms, not from injury, but from something he had touched on the other side. The chants opened doors, he wrote, but I failed to close them all. There are rooms in the spirit realm where no soul should linger. I lingered too long. He began seeing figures in the temple, shadowy silhouettes standing perfectly still in the corners of rooms, vanishing when faced. Other monks claimed not to see them, but Nanda noted that the younger disciples began leaving the monastery soon after. One, he wrote, had wept for hours without explanation before fleeing into the jungle, never to return. By then, Nanda had abandoned all regular duties. He no longer led prayers or joined communal meals. Instead, he meditated in isolation for days, fasting, and whispering unknown languages to himself. Villagers who delivered offerings reported hearing soft chanting even when no monk was present. He believed he had made contact, not with gods, not with demons, but with consciousness itself, raw and unfiltered. A force that had no name, no mercy, no interest in morality. It simply existed, watching. It doesn't promise peace, he wrote, only awareness. And in awareness, all illusions die. Even the illusion of the self. Dr. Arun's colleagues noticed his demeanor shifting, mirroring Nanda's isolation. He had become pale, distracted. One night, he claimed the letter was incomplete, that pages were missing, and that they had to find them before the full picture could be understood. Before. It found them first. But the others didn't understand. To them, the letter was fascinating, yes, but only as a historical curiosity. To Arun, it had become a mirror. In the week following his full translation of the letter, Dr. Arun became increasingly withdrawn. He avoided direct sunlight, often sitting in the shade with the scroll open before him, tracing the symbols over and over as though trying to recall something he had never learned. That's when the others began to notice strange occurrences. It started with sound, soft chanting echoing through the forest long after dark. It was not in any recognizable language, yet it stirred deep unease, like a memory from another life. One night, a researcher awoke to the sound of rustling paper. She found her tent flap open and Arun standing barefoot in the clearing, whispering to the forest. He didn't remember any of it the next morning. The jungle itself seemed to react. Insects became silent around the camp at dusk. Trees looked as if they had shifted position overnight. Most disturbing of all, the once abandoned temple halls began to feel inhabited. Not by animals or humans, but by presence. Inside the monastery, Arun returned to the sealed chamber where the letter had been discovered. Beneath a loose floorboard, he found an object wrapped in cloth, an obsidian pendant etched with the same spiral eye glyph from Nanda's drawings. When he touched it, the world went silent. He blacked out. When he came to, the pendant was gone. But the chants continued, louder now, not just in the air but in his mind. His colleagues urged him to leave, to return to the city and seek rest. He refused. I'm close, he told them. He didn't vanish, he ascended. And the path is still open. That night, the dreams began. Everyone in the camp dreamed of the same thing, a vast corridor of black stone, lined with monks whose faces were featureless and smooth. At the end of the hall stood Bhikkhu, eyes closed, palms upward, and hovering inches above the ground. He smiled, and they all woke up screaming. Dr. Arun refused to sleep after the dreams began. He stayed awake for nearly 3 days, obsessively redrawing the symbols from the scroll, convinced they were instructions. Not for a ritual, he murmured to himself, but for a transformation. The others decided it was time to leave. They packed their gear, prepared to abandon the expedition, but Arun was nowhere to be found. They searched the temple one last time. In the deepest chamber beneath the monastery, a place not marked on any map, they found the door slightly open. Inside was a single candle burning on the floor, casting trembling shadows on the cracked stone walls. In the center sat Arun, eyes closed, arms resting on his knees, and his voice gently chanting in that same alien tongue from the dreams. When they called his name, he didn't respond. One of them stepped closer, and the candle flickered violently. The temperature dropped. Then Arun opened his eyes. They were entirely black. For a moment, no one moved. And then, without warning, he began to laugh. Not maniacally, not cruelly, but with a sound so calm, so peaceful, that it froze their blood. His body trembled as he whispered one final line, a quote from Nanda's letter. "We are not meant to find the truth. We are meant to become it." The candle extinguished. When light returned, sunlight piercing through cracks in the roof, Arun was gone. No footprints. No sound. Only the scroll remained, laid out neatly where he had sat, and a symbol scrawled on the floor in ash, the spiral eye, completed at last with a single drop of dried red ink in its center. The team returned to the city in silence. The scroll was locked away, never translated again. And yet, to this day, every now and then, a visitor to the Taung Myint ruins claims to hear chanting just beyond the trees, and see the faint shape of a monk watching from the shadows, his eyes closed, as if listening. Waiting.